It began with a blackout, one that no one could explain. In the heart of Beijing's entertainment district, where every street lamp glows like molten gold and every passing silhouette could be a superstar, a single studio building flickered into darkness at exactly 12:03 a.m. The city was awake. The fandoms were asleep. And yet, inside that towering glass structure, something monumental was happening. Something so quietly explosive that when whispers finally leaked out, they detonated across the internet like fireworks soaked in gasoline. A midnight visit. 2 silhouettes. 1 room with no cameras. And a rumor storm no one was prepared for. Inside Studio 11, the one reserved only for top-tier A-listers, 2 figures stood face-to-face for the first time in years. The heavy blinds were down, the lights dimmed to a soft tungsten glow, and the air between them vibrated with both tension and familiarity. Wang Yibo arrived first. He always did. Silent, sharp, calculated like a shadow that chooses when to become visible. Dressed in a black bomber jacket stitched with silver threads, he looked like a walking eclipse, half hidden, half radiant. The door clicked shut behind him. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the metal table, betraying neither nerves nor excitement, only the rhythm of someone waiting for something inevitable. Then soft footsteps, a reflection in the glass. Breath. Xiao Zhan entered. He wasn't supposed to be there. At least, not according to any official schedule. Yet he arrived in a long, deep crimson coat, the color of midnight cherries and forbidden secrets. He removed his scarf, revealing the kind of smile that could melt icebergs and ignite fandom wars at the same time. That was when everything changed. Because the moment Xiao Zhan stepped inside, the power flickered as if the entire building was reacting to the reunion of 2 forces too strong to exist in the same room without consequence. The rumors later exaggerated it. Some fans claiming it was destiny, others insisting it was sabotage, but the truth was simpler and far more cinematic. It set off a chain reaction that would ripple across all of Sea Entertainment. For a second neither spoke. They merely observed each other, as if confirming the other was real. Then Xiao Zhan broke the silence. "You still come early," he said with a half-smile. Yibo shrugged, leaning against the table with that familiar coolness. "You're still dramatic." Beep. Shared laugh. A crack in the tension wide enough to let nostalgia spill in. The midnight meeting wasn't an accident. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't even a casual catch-up between former co-stars. It was a negotiation, one that had been brewing beneath the public's radar for months. Potential reunion project. A script that only 2 people could do justice. A storyline that demanded chemistry, tension, and the kind of emotional electricity only they could create together. But it wasn't the project itself that set the internet ablaze. It was what happened next. The studio secretary, half asleep, clutching a cup of green tea, accidentally passed by the wrong hallway at the wrong time. She paused because she heard voices, then laughter, then the unmistakable sound of someone tapping on a table rhythmically, a habit only one Chinese superstar was known for. She didn't see faces, but she saw silhouettes. Close. Too close. She froze. They had no idea anyone was near. Ran. By sunrise, the internet had received its first spark. A mysterious post from an anonymous insider account appeared on Weibo. 2 major stars reunited privately last night. Chaos incoming. 7 minutes later, another post. The building lights flickered as if reacting to their energy. If you know, you know. Chaos did, in fact, arrive. Within hours, fandom detectives mobilized. Clips of passing cars. Shadows captured on CCTV reflections. A blurry snippet of someone in a crimson coat. The timestamp of 12:03 a.m. Fans began piecing it together like a crime scene board. Threads, arrows, circles, theories. Suddenly, the world had a new obsession. The midnight reunion. Some claimed they were discussing a drama. Others believed it was a reconciliation. A smaller, more chaotic faction insisted it was destiny. Meanwhile, inside the studio, Xiao Zhan and Yibo were anything but dramatic. They were focused, serious, spirited. The script on the table between them sparked heated debate. It was a story of betrayal, loyalty, tension, and redemption. A spiritual successor to the series that launched them into global stardom, but deeper, darker, more intricate. They argued over scenes, shared ideas, challenged each other like rivals who respected each other too much to give anything less than excellence. At one point, Yibo leaned over the table, pointing at a crucial dialogue line. "This doesn't work unless you deliver it," he said. "Why me?" Xiao Zhan raised an eyebrow. "Because you're the only one who can make it sound real." The silence that followed carried weight, both personal and artistic. Distant, muffled thunder rumbled outside. Snow began drifting past the windows, slow and soft, like cinematic confetti. The midnight world glowed in silver. As the meeting stretched into the early hours, they reviewed stunt sequences, emotional arcs, wardrobe concepts. Papers sprawled across the table. Ba scribbled notes. Xiao Zhan paced, gesturing animatedly as he dissected the storyline. Their synergy was unmistakable, fiery, effortless, unstoppable. At 3:17 a.m., the lights flickered again. The building wasn't haunted. It was old, but the fandom would never accept that explanation. When the automatic blinds opened slightly, revealing them lit by the blue-black glow of the Beijing skyline, the janitor walking past the hallway nearly dropped his mop. He didn't see them, but he saw enough. One silhouette leaning over the table, another beside him, two shadows in synchronized motion. By morning, the sightings had multiplied into a frenzy. 20 different accounts, each with their own dramatic angle. They were arguing passionately. No, they were laughing. One of them touched the other's shoulder. They were filming something already. It's happening. The reunion is real. Studio officials scrambled. PR teams panicked. Both sides issued stiff, cold corporate responses. No comment. Which, of course, only added gasoline to the fire. The fandoms exploded. Fan art surged. Edits flooded TikTok. YouTube thumbnails screamed in neon fonts. Tweets turned poetic, chaotic, desperate, delighted. For the next 48 hours, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan dominated every trending page across Asia. Meanwhile, the two men who caused the global meltdown stepped out of the studio quietly around 4 a.m. Snow fell on their shoulders like soft confetti. Yibo tucked his hands into his pockets. Xiao Zhan glanced at him, exhaling a faint cloud of white breath. "Think it'll leak?" Xiao Zhan asked. Ba smirked faintly. "Everything leaks." They walked off into the quiet, each going separate directions, leaving behind a storm neither fully understood but both secretly expected. By the next day, the industry was buzzing with uncontainable curiosity. A secret project, a reunion, a contract, promise, a spark. The truth remained locked inside Studio 11, buried within dim lights, scattered papers, and the memory of a midnight that would be talked about for months. But one thing was clear. Whatever happened that night, whatever conversation unfolded, whatever agreement was made, changed everything. The next night the city looked different. Beijing glowed under a pale moon, its towers rising like polished silver spears piercing the sky. Snow still clung to the rooftops, illuminated in soft neon hues, but beneath the calm surface, the entertainment world rippled with unease. Rumors didn't sleep. They multiplied. The midnight reunion had already taken on a life of its own, bigger, hungrier, unstoppable. But inside the same towering studio building, something even more electrifying was brewing. Studio 11 had been secured again. Card access disabled. Security cameras, under maintenance. Every hallway light dimmed to the color of amber honey. Someone was expecting someone. At exactly 11:58 p.m., Wang Yibo returned. This time he didn't wear a bomber jacket. He wore an obsidian trench coat that made him look like a slice of midnight walking through the building. His hair, slightly damp from the melting snow, framed his face with an effortless sharpness. No entourage, no assistant, Just the echo of his slow footsteps down the silent corridor. He paused outside Studio 11, his expression unreadable. Inside, the room was warm, lit only by a single floor lamp casting shadows along the walls like moving brushstrokes. The table was cleared, the script tucked neatly inside a leather folder. For a moment, he simply stood still, as if gathering thoughts he rarely shared. Then the door clicked open behind him. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. Xiao Zhan's presence was unmistakable, soft but commanding, warm but powerful. Tonight, he wore a fitted dark turtleneck and a camel-colored coat draped elegantly over his shoulders. Snowflakes dotted his hair like tiny crystals. "You're early again," Xiao Zhan said, his voice gentler than last night. "Habit," Yibo replied without looking back. But when he did turn around, their eyes met with a familiarity that made time feel elastic, stretching backward into memories, forward into possibility. They entered the studio together. The air felt charged, heavier, filled with the scent of winter and warm leather. When Xiao Zhan removed his coat, the soft rustle echoed through the dim room like a turning point. He placed it on the chair and approached the table. "So," he said, tapping the leather folder lightly, "you read it again?" "3 times, Yibo answered. "And I still think the ending doesn't hit hard enough." Xiao Zhan smirked. "You want tragedy. I want impact. That's the same thing for you." "Not always." The playful irritation between them, half serious, half affectionate, filled the room with a tension more powerful than the script they were studying. Xiao Zhan flipped it open, leaning over the table. Yibo stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. A tiny moment, invisible to the outside world but loud inside the 4 walls of Studio 11. The scene they were scrutinizing involved 2 characters separated by betrayal, reunited by necessity, forced to trust one another again. The parallels were not lost on either of them. "You think this line works?" Xiao Zhan asked. Yibo shook his head. "No. It sounds forced." "Then what would you put?" Yibo hesitated, then recited quietly. "If I walk toward you and you walk toward me, maybe we can meet somewhere that isn't the past." Xiao Zhan froze. He hadn't expected that. Not the softness. Not the vulnerability. Not the weight. "That's," he swallowed, "better." Yibo, suddenly uncomfortable, looked away. "It's fine. It's more than fine." Xiao Zhan held his gaze, steady and full of meaning. "You've always been better at this than you admit." Their eyes lingered. Too long. Too much. Too charged. Then Xiao Zhan let the moment fade and slid back into the chair, flipping to the next page. "We need to redo the confrontation scene," he said, voice steadier. "The emotions are too shallow." "Agreed." And so the night unfolded like a ballet of ideas and arguments. Xiao Zhan paced the room, hands gesturing through the air as he dissected emotional beats with surgical precision. Yibo countered with his own vision, cold logic blended with razor-like instinct. They clashed and merged, their perspectives forming something neither could achieve alone. At one point, Xiao Zhan acted out a line with raw intensity. His voice cracked, his eyes burning with emotion as he slammed his palm on the table. Yibo forgot to breathe for a moment. "You can't deliver it like that during filming," he said quietly. "Why not?" Xiao Zhan challenged, chest rising and falling. "Because," Yibo's voice softened, "it'll be too real." The silence that followed was heavy, real, unfiltered. A truth neither expected. Xiao Zhan sat back down slowly. "Maybe real is exactly what we need." Yibo didn't reply, but something shifted. Just then, a gust of cold wind rattled the studio windows. A sensor light in the hallway flickered again, briefly, eerily, before fading back into darkness. The building felt alive, as if it knew the weight of what was happening inside. Outside, snow began falling harder. Inside, 2 superstars sat in a bubble of warmth and creation. By 2:40 a.m. they had restructured half the script. Pages lay scattered on the table like fallen petals. Coffee cups stood empty. The lamp flickered slightly as the room grew warmer from their concentrated energy. Xiao Zhan rested his chin on his hand, studying a line Yibo had written. This is really good. Yibo looked mildly annoyed. Stop sounding surprised. I'm not surprised, Xiao Zhan replied softly. I'm impressed. Yibo blinked. Since when do you say things like that? Since now. Another silence. Quieter, gentler this time. Then the door creaked. Both men looked up sharply. A security guard passed by the hallway, shining a flashlight through the frosted glass panel. The beam caught their silhouettes. Close, focused, intense. For a split second, it illuminated them like a scene in a drama. The guard paused. Xiao Zhan's eyes widened, but tensed. But the guard simply nodded and continued walking, the beam fading with him. Xiao Zhan exhaled. That was close. Yibo smirked faintly. Everything leaks. Xiao Zhan shot him a look. You and your prophecies. They went back to work, but the moment lingered like a heartbeat. At 3:12 a.m., Xiao Zhan leaned back, stretching. His muscles tensed, his shirt pulling slightly, and Yibo's gaze flicked away with practiced nonchalance. We should stop, Xiao Zhan said. You'll burn out. I don't burn out. You do, Xiao Zhan corrected softly. You just hide it. Yibo didn't argue this time. Instead, he closed the folder gently. Same time tomorrow. Xiao Zhan hesitated, just long enough for Yibo to notice. Then he nodded. Same time. They gathered their things slowly, as if neither wanted to break the invisible thread between them. When they finally stepped outside, the snowstorm had turned the world into a glowing white canvas. Their breath formed clouds. Their silhouettes merged into the night. Before heading separate ways, Xiao Zhan paused. Yibo. Yibo stopped walking. Tonight felt important, Xiao Zhan said quietly. Yibo didn't turn around. But he replied, voice low, carried by the wind. It was. And then they disappeared into the snow, leaving behind a studio filled with scattered pages, dim lights, and the echo of a reunion the world still didn't fully understand. But one thing had become clear. This wasn't just a script. This wasn't just a meeting. This wasn't just nostalgia.